Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to be going back to the NBA and doing one of my trade proposal videos, which I really enjoy doing. I haven't done one for a while because the NBA season hasn't really been in trade mode for a while, but just a couple of weeks ago, the clearance for trading like half of the league's players passed. So now anybody who signed a new contract before the season can be traded, which didn't happen until I think it was like 2 weeks ago. So that opens up a lot more trade possibilities for a number of teams. And specifically today, I'm going to be focusing on Damian Lillard, who it came to light a couple of days ago. I heard he was interested in he's open to the idea of being traded. He's not actively seeking a trade from the Blazers, but he's not against it anymore. So with that being said, I'm going to go through 5 trade scenarios I made up for Damian Lillard, and we will go from there. I want to stress that these are all not like perfectly ideal situations necessarily, but I do think that they are trades that would have some benefits for both teams, and that's where I'm going to start. So first I have a trade between the Mavericks and the Blazers. I have Damian Lillard going to the Mavericks along with Kent Bazemore, who's basically just salary cap filler at this point. Then going back to the Blazers, I have Tim Hardaway Jr., Courtney Lee, who's basically salary cap filler, DeLon Wright, Dwight Powell, and a future first round pick. So now initially you're probably saying, okay, if you take out Courtney Lee and Kent Bazemore, because those are more like the salary cap filler guys. This is really a trade of Damian Lillard for Tim Hardaway Jr., Dwight Powell, DeLon Wright, and a first round pick. You might say, well, that's not really a very good trade for the Blazers, but the way I see it, Tim Hardaway Jr.'s 18 points per game as a good sixth man. Dwight Powell's a starting caliber power forward in the NBA, and the Blazers really don't have any strong forwards at this point. Like, I think Anthony Tolliver is technically the number one power forward on their depth chart because both Mo Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu left the team last year. So they've just been playing like Rodney Hood a little bit power forward and a few other guys. But they don't have an actual power forward right now. So he would be like an immediate starter for the team. And then DeLon Wright would probably be starting as well because he's starting for the Mavericks and he's a decent starter on a good day. He can get a team like 10 points a game, 5 assists, that sort of thing. The future first round pick is just a sweetener, but really for the Blazers, what this trade would do is provide you depth that you really don't have right now. Um, so your starting lineup after this would probably be something like DeLon Wright, C.J. McCollum, Rodney Hood, Dwight Powell, Hassan Whiteside, with a bench of Tim Hardaway Jr. coming off the bench, probably getting you like 18 points per game. Maybe Courtney Lee if you still want to play him. Nurkic when he comes back. That's kind of the team that you're looking at. And are they necessarily better than the Blazers are right now? I don't know. I mean, I forgot to mention Carmelo Anthony. They'd also still have Carmelo Anthony, but after this year, he wouldn't really be part of the plans, I don't think. Courtney Lee's contract is expiring, so you'd get that $13 million back. And I think it's a trade of you're trading a really good player for a lot of depth pieces because their depth is very weak at this point, in my opinion. And like, let's say Dame goes out with an injury or CJ goes out with an injury. This is a very poor team, and this trade really secures them a lot of depth. On the other hand, I think the Mavericks are a team who right now are trying to push all their chips to the center of the table and just go all in. With this trade, they do lose a lot of depth, but they do gain probably what would be the best player on their team, or arguably the second best player on their team with Dame. You'd have a starting lineup probably looking something like Damian Lillard, Kent Bazemore, Doncic, let's see here, probably Porzingis, and then Boban Marjanovic, I would think. So it'd be a really big team starting off, but I think that would be a really formidable starting lineup. On the bench, you'd really be lacking. You'd have like Seth Curry and Dorian Finney-Smith, but not much else, honestly. So from that perspective, it would be not a very deep team, but they would have tons of star power and be in really good shape going forward. The next trade I have on here is the Blazers and the Nuggets. The Blazers sending Damian to the Nuggets in exchange for Jamal Murray and Paul Millsap. So this is a deal that would definitely benefit the Blazers right now, along with in the future. And I think for the Nuggets, it would definitely help them a lot right now. I think the Nuggets are a team who's trying to capitalize on having a lot of good young players who are still relatively cheap and have a lot of depth too. You know, you look up and down their roster, they've just got a plethora of good young players between Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Monty Morris, Malik Beasley, Michael Porter Jr. Those are like five guys who are all uh, I think people that other teams would want to trade for, and they're not any of them too expensive yet. So why would the Blazers do this trade? They get Paul Millsap, who fills the power forward need that they have, because Carmelo is not the much of a solution in my opinion. And then also you get back Jamal Murray, who is significantly younger than Dame. I believe Dame's like 30 or 29, and Jamal Murray's like 24 or 23. So he definitely is like a reset button on the team. You know, CJ's like 26, and so he would really become the elder statesman compared to Jamal Murray. I believe CJ is like 26. Maybe I'm not 100% on that, but maybe 27. But still, the team gets a lot younger getting Jamal Murray. He's a combo guard, can play either position. He's a lot taller than Dame, 6'4" compared to 6'2". Maybe that's not a lot taller, but it's a significant height upgrade. And so again, I think the Blazers get a little bit deeper. Their starting lineup after this would probably look like Jamal, CJ, Rodney Hood, Millsap, Whiteside with Carmelo coming off the bench with Kent Bazemore, and Anthony Simons. Maybe that doesn't look that much better, but it does add a whole new rotation piece that you didn't have before, and Paul Millsap, who can probably get you like 15 points per game. Murray's probably going to get you still like 17 to 18 points per game, so he's going to do an okay job replacing Dame. And he still is young, so he has a lot of space to grow. And then as far as the Blazers, you get Damian Lillard, who's definitely the best player in the trade. And I think he really would complement Jokic well in that he can space the floor and get Jokic the ball pretty effectively and be like a legit number two or number one, and Jokic is the number two, whichever the Nuggets would decide. And then also I thought maybe in case the Blazers don't want to take this deal, you'd have to throw in a first round pick, but I think it is relatively fair for the players being given up. Next trade I have on here is Damian Lillard to the Miami Heat. I have the Blazers getting Goran Dragic, Justice Winslow, and Tyler Hero in exchange for Damian Lillard. So the Heat side of it's pretty easy. They've got a lot of quality players on their NBA roster, and I think that it doesn't kill them giving up any of these guys to get Dame. And by getting Dame, you get the best player in the trade. You give up depth for sure, but you get the best player back, and you really pair another star with Jimmy Butler. So your starting lineup after this is probably going to look something like Dame, Kendrick Nunn, Jimmy Butler, James Johnson probably, and then Bam Adebayo with something on the bench like Kelly Olynyk, Dion Waiters, Derrick Jones Jr. So definitely less deep than they were previously, but they definitely upgrade significantly as far as star power. And I think it would be a good trade for them just because they have so many pieces already. They don't need to be 12 deep. You really only need to be like 8 deep in the NBA these days. So I think it definitely benefits them. As for the Blazers, you get Goran Dragic back, who can kind of fill a void for the time being. For Dame, you know, he's gonna average currently this season 16 points per game and 5 assists. So it's definitely not replacing Dame's production all the way, but doing an okay job of it. Justice Winslow, 12 points a game, 7 rebounds. He could sort of be like your long-term solution for your or replacement for like Al-Farouq Aminu or Mo Harkless. He could play that, small power forward position and do all right. And then you got Tyler Hero, who's averaging 14 points per game as a rookie, has a lot of upside, and I think he's really why the Blazers would agree to this. So the Blazers starting lineup after this trade would probably look something like Dragic, CJ McCollum, Rodney Hood, Justice Winslow, and Hassan Whiteside, with Tyler Hero and Carmelo and Kent Bazemore coming off the bench as their main players. And then for the Heat, your starting lineup, I think I already went over, but it'd be like um, Dame, probably then at shooting guard, Jimmy, small forward, or actually shooting guard would probably be Kendrick Nunn, small forward, Jimmy, power forward, James Johnson, center, Bam Adebayo. All right, for the fourth trade, I have Dame Lillard going to the 76ers along with Rodney Hood in exchange for Ben Simmons and Al Horford. Now, this trade may seem like too big of a swing for each team, but I think in my mind it does make a lot of sense. So let's look at Philly first. People keep saying, with Ben Simmons and JoJo on the floor at the same time, they don't have spacing. Well, if you get Ben Simmons off the team and you get Dame Lillard in his place, that's a way better spacing for this team. And then also, if you get Rodney Hood basically in exchange for Al Horford, that allows Tobias Harris to switch back to his more natural power forward that he's grown into in the NBA today, whereas he's been playing small forward. But I think he actually would work a little bit better as a power forward in today's NBA of really small forwards. And that's not a play on, that's kind of worked out as a play on words, but what I meant is power forwards who are smaller. Let's see here. And Rodney Hood would be a fine starting option for this team. He's averaging 11 points per game. He doesn't have to be averaging 17 or anything. I mean, Horford right now is only averaging 13 points per game, so he'd adequately replace him. So your starting lineup for Philly after this trade would be like Damian Lillard, Josh Richardson, Rodney Hood, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. It definitely doesn't have as much of a well-known names to it, but I think at the same time, like Damian Lillard's definitely definitely the best player in this trade. And it's sort of like if you look at who's getting traded, the Philly's getting the best player in this trade and the fourth best player, and Portland would be getting the second and third best players. So it kind of works out in that way. For Portland, I think what they've really struggled with, in my opinion, is that CJ and Dame have very similar games and that they're very small guards who, Dame 6'2", CJ 6'3". They're not a very big backcourt whatsoever. I think Ben Simmons immediately fixes that in that he is 6'10" as a point guard. I think he allows CJ more opportunities in that he can assist the ball a lot better than Dame can, in my opinion. And I think he just adds a way different dimension that this Portland team would be sorely lacking, in that he just adds a wrench in the plan. Whereas I feel like teams can basically plan for Portland pretty well, I feel like. As long as you've got a good backcourt defense, then once you shut down those two guys, the rest of the team's kind of just, I don't know how to say it without offending Portland fans, but they seem kind of one-dimensional. Like either CJ and Dame go off or we lose the game. But this kind of like Ben Simmons can score 10 points or 8 points in the game and still be the factor that wins you the game just off of getting like 12 rebounds and 15 assists sort of thing. Whereas like with Dame and CJ, it's like, okay, the only way we can win is Dame and CJ each score 25, or Dame scores 40 and CJ scores 18. But you're never going to have a game where it's like, oh, Dame scored 8 points and we won. That never happens. So I think this adds a new dimension for Portland. And as far as Al Horford, they have again been lacking a power forward really. He could fill in that spot. Starting lineup after this trade would look like Ben Simmons, CJ McCollum, small forward. You'd probably have Kent Bazemore filling in, or you'd have Anthony Simons at point guard, or a backcourt of CJ and Anthony Simons, small forward Ben Simmons, who's really playing like point forward, and then Horford and Hassan Whiteside. Either way, you've got options, but I like this trade for them. And then off the bench, they'd have Carmelo again and Nurkic when he comes back, and Zach Collins. So again, a trade where Portland gets probably only slightly better, but I think it adds so much versatility to their team that they would do it. And then the last trade I have here is Damian Lillard going to the Milwaukee Bucks, along with Kent Bazemore as salary filler, to I said Milwaukee, in exchange for a first round pick in 2020, Ersan Ilyasova, George Hill, and Chris Middleton. Now, really, it's it's essentially Chris Middleton and a first round pick for Dame Lillard because the other players are kind of just throw-ins. But the way I see it, George Hill is still a decent NBA player, and he could start for this Blazers team if you want to keep Anthony Simons as a bench player. Um, and Chris Middleton this year, he's averaging 18 points and 5 rebounds a game. George Hill's averaging 10 points. Ersan's averaging 8 points. I don't think it's a I don't think it's really an awful return or anything for the Blazers. Yes, you give up the best player in the trade, but you're giving up Kent Bazemore isn't really anything. He's essentially salary cap filler. Um, so for Portland, your starting lineup after this is going to look like George Hill, CJ, Chris Middleton, probably Ersan, and then Hassan Whiteside um, with then you've got a bench of Rodney Hood, Zach Collins, Anthony Simons. I mean, it's not a bad trade for them, honestly. They get depth back and they get a first round pick that they can build off of. And I just think that this team needs to get a little bit bigger, and Chris Middleton can bring that to them. And you could have stretches where you play a lineup of like CJ, Middleton, Rodney Hood, Ersan, and Hassan Whiteside. That's a much bigger lineup than what the Blazers could tote out right now. So I like it in that, again, it adds a little bit of versatility to this team. For Milwaukee, I think that their key to getting to the finals and winning is getting Giannis a really reliable second option, and I think that could definitely be Dame. He'd be like the perfect number 2 on a championship team. And Kent Bazemore, you could play him, but he'd really be more a salary cap filler. But starting lineup for this team after the trade would probably be something along the lines of like Dame. Shooting guard would probably be Wesley Matthews. Small forward, Kent Bazemore. Power forward, Giannis. Center, Brook Lopez. And then interestingly, off the bench, you'd have Eric Bledsoe, who, when Chris Paul was on the Clippers, Eric Bledsoe actually used to play a lot of shooting guard, and I think they could actually come up with some interesting combinations of like him and Dame playing together, or him obviously subbing in for Dame, but him and Dame playing together. I didn't want to give up Bledsoe in this trade because I thought that Middleton and Bledsoe and a first round pick for Dame just seemed like a bit too much. So I tried to kind of work around that. They do give up some depth, but I think Eric Bledsoe is a really good sixth man. He can come in, give you 15 points a game off the bench. And it's such a tall team that you really don't lose anything. You could play him and um, Dame at the same time, and it wouldn't be that awful. You could have, besides them, Giannis. You could also have Giannis and Brook Lopez, who are both 7-footers, and DJ Wilson, who's 6'10". You could have those three on the court to kind of counter the short backcourt, and I think it would work all right because they do have size in other places. So yeah, I think it would benefit both teams. And that's really all I got, guys. I think that the Blazers definitely should consider shaking it up because I feel like they're the most in a rut team of anybody in the NBA. Just year after year, it's like Dame and CJ. Let's get to the first round. Let's get to the first round and lose. Let's get to the second round and lose. Even when they got to the Western Conference Finals last year, I predicted it would be a sweep. I never believed in this team. I really never have since Aldridge left. I think that their ceiling is what happened last year, getting swept and embarrassed in the Western Conference Finals, even with the other team's best player out for the whole series. That's like their ceiling, like the best that they could ever do. And I think they're kind of on the downswing now, This year, I think best case scenario is getting up to 500 and getting swept like in the first round. So I think that this team definitely should consider switching things up, and this could be a way to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.